Hello, how are you? I hope everyone is gesund, stark und freilich, begashmis und I hope everyone is healthy, strong, and happy physically and spiritually. Today we're going to talk about an issue which is very, very relevant, and that is about achieving transcendence. If we talk to an average person, most of us would like to improve, graduate, move forward, evolve, basically to reach the next level, which is connected to redemption and transcendence. So today we're going to speak about the most fundamental steps in redemption and liberation in our service of Hashem. And this could be a general advice concerning getting ahead in life in general. But first, we'll start with a prayer, which is related to the subject we're talking about today, which is bringing back passion into our lives. And this is where we say Friday night, Hodur Noe Zivo Ilom, Nafshi Choylas Avosecha, Ono Elno Refono Lo, Baharis Lo Noyem Zivecha, Oz Tischazik Visisrape, Bohoisalo Simchas Elam. How unbelievably beautiful are these words. Glorious, beautiful one, radiance of the world. We're talking to Hashem. My soul is lovesick for you. That's Choylas Ava. We're so full of love. We're bursting for love for Hashem, and we're missing Hashem because we're in this world and we're aware of the limitations of this world, and we feel distance from spirituality. That means lovesick. I beseech you, Almighty, it continues. Please heal her now. That means my soul, who's lovesick, by showing her the pleasantness of your radiance. How am I going to be healed? By meriting a revelation, getting closer, more intimate with Hashem. Then she will be strengthened and healed and will experience everlasting joy. Wow. So this is the whole content of this prayer. We're talking about a neshama, a yid, is bursting with love for Hashem, and we're asking to become one in a greater, deeper level. So now let's talk about today's parsha. It speaks about the makos, the plagues that Hashem struck Egypt with. So it's the beginning of the redemption. There were 10 makos, and then next week's parsha, Parshas Boy, the Yidden cross over the border from Egypt and go outside of Egypt. And this story of the Exodus from Egypt is one of the most cardinal principal foundations of Yiddishkeit. As a matter of fact, the Pasuk says, "Laman tisker es yom tzeischa me'eretz Mitzrayim kol yemei chayecha." We have to remember the liberation, the Exodus from Egypt every single day of our lives. You know, that's how important it is that we have to think about it every single day. If we say the Shema so many times a day. And not only that, we say, Kol Yemei Chayecha, Lahavi L'Meisa Mashiach. Even when Mashiach comes, we're still going to be speaking about the wonders of Yetzias Mitzrayim. But really, it's important not only because we have to remember about miracles and what Hashem did for us, but it's about Judaism and the message. And then we also know that it's the Alter Rebbe talks about it, and the Rebbe chose this as one of the 12 psukim. B'chol doir v'doir chayev odem liris es atzmai ki'ilu hu yotzam b'Mitzrayim. It's not only the mantiske shem tzeischem es Mitzrayim that what happened 3,000 years ago is so important that we have to think about it every day. No, it's happening every single day. There's a mini exodus or liberation. So therefore, now let's get back to this parsha. That means the message of Parshas Ve'era, where it talks about the beginning of liberation. And redemption is something which is happening every single day and is important. In other words, i.e., this is, like we say, there's the 12 steps. So these are the steps. What are the steps? You could say that the 10 makos, the 10 plagues, are the 10 steps of liberation. Whatever your circumstances are, whatever your limitations are, you want to break out? So here comes the 10 steps. Follow these 10 steps and you'll have your redemption. So now we have to understand, first let's talk about the way it was in the physical Egypt and redemption before we talk about our inner struggle of limitations. So the question is, first of all, and by the way, this is a subject which all the commentators speak about it. What is the order of the 10 Makkos? You could give a lecture for 3 hours talking about all the different commentaries of why it went in such a sequence. Everything is precise in Yiddishkeit, and especially we're talking about a direct sequence, which the Eibishter was the one who's planning the strategies and the moves of how the Yidden are going to go out of Mitzrayim. So why is it that first is Dam, Tzardea? Why is it work with such a sequence of the sequence that it was with the 10 Makkos, that it starts with Dam, then we come to Makkos B'chayres, etc. So there's many different commentaries which we're not going to get into. What I'm going to tell you now, today, is the Sikha of the Rebbe Chelik Aleph, which he only speaks about 2 of the 10 Makkos, Dam and Tzardea. And I always felt, halavai, there would have been a Sikha or talks of the Rebbe where he went through all the 10. Because from this that the Rebbe spoke about the first 2, which is really the main 2 keys, how to achieve liberation, but we can see from this that there must be also the explanations to the rest. And in other commentaries in the Torah, it speaks about the other and the sequence of all 10. Anyway, so first of all we have to understand why this sequence of first Dam and then Tzardea. Also, another question, when it comes to Tzardea, the frogs, the Gemara learns out from here the idea of Mesiras Nefesh, which is pretty interesting in any case, that we learn Mesiras Nefesh from the frogs, that even though they're creatures of the sea, they jumped into the ovens. It says that they were in the Tanurecha, they jumped into the ovens of the Egyptians. So we see that the frogs were ready to go and sacrifice themselves for Hashem. But the question is, why is this learnt from the frogs? How come there's nothing like this that we could learn from Dever, from the wild animals, or from Kinim, or from lice? Only the frogs give us this lesson of self-sacrifice, that they jumped into the ovens. Why did the Torah, why did the Eibishter decide that we should learn this lesson from the frogs? And the answer is because if we understand what the whole inner content and significance of the Makkah of Tzardea is, we have the answer. So let's start with Dam. What's Dam? So Dam is the first missile, direct assault on the central headquarters of Egypt. Egypt is the enemy. Egypt represents anti-God. Pari says, he made himself. He denies God's existence. And he's the oppressive one who's anti-Bnei Yisrael. And we're enslaved over there. So in the spiritual sense, Egypt, as we know, the word Mitzrayim, Egypt, is not only a geographical place on a map, but the word Mitzrayim means limitations. So now the first step to be able to break out of the limitations is Dam. What does Dam mean? And where does Dam happen? Moshe strikes the river. The river is Nilus, the Nile River. The Nile River was a god by the Egyptians, because that was the source of the agriculture and the produce, etc. So therefore, how do we start the liberation? We need to attack. We need to deal with the Nile, which is the anti. What's the problem with the Nile? What does it represent? What is river? What is water? Water is coldness. Coldness represents indifference. Coldness represents apathy. So it's a coldness. What is the coldness of Klippa? What is the coldness of evil? A bad coldness. A bad coldness is when you don't care about what you're meant to care about. Instead of getting excited about a pasuk in Torah, instead of getting excited about putting on tefillin, instead of getting excited because Pesach is coming, you're excited about a bottle of beer, or you're excited about a bar of chocolate, or you're excited about matters of this world. So therefore, the first step towards reaching the next level, to going out of your prison, is Dam. What is Dam? Dam is blood. Blood is warm. Blood is hot. So therefore, what do we do over here? Moshe Rabbeinu strikes the coldness, and into the coldness into the coldness, the indifference, he brings passion. He brings a fire. In other words, we have to introduce a fervor, a fire, and a flame that we're not having right now towards things that we should have, to the good things. That's dam. So that's the first makkah. Get excited, get excited. Next comes tzvadea. What's the next step? The next step is that in those things that you are excited about and you're hot-blooded about, relax, take it easy. And that's why we need the tzvadea, the frog, who's an amphibian, a creature of the water. He represents coldness. What does he do? He jumps into the ovens of Mitzrayim. He jumps into the passion which you're not meant to have. So what is tzvadea? Tzvadea comes along and says, what are you so excited about sports for? Sports don't matter. Tzvadea says, you know what? It's just a game. Why are you getting so caught up in it? So in other words, it's like we say, take a shower, relax, etc. So first comes dam. Get excited about that which at present you're not excited and you're indifferent to. So dam means a fire for the right things and an excitement for the right things, where before there was indifference and coldness. And tzvadea represents the opposite. We have to go into the things that we're now excited about, matters of this world, things that are physical, and instead we say, no, we calm that down completely. So the Rebbe now comes and takes a lesson, which is an amazing lesson. We'll get back to the idea in a second, but first I want to say the order. First is dam and then tzvadea, which means first we got to get excited about the right things, which would mean a tenua of asay tov, do the right thing, stress positive action. And then we say surmana, turning away from the bad thing, which means calm down about those things that you're excited about. Turn away from that which is not good. So l'chayra, there is a verse that says first surmana and then vasay tov. First turn away from bad and then do good. So how come over here we're saying that the order is the opposite? First we say do good. Dam represents the idea of doing good, getting excited and passionate. We were not before passionate. And then comes tzvadea, turning away, relaxing, and becoming indifferent to things that deserve that you should be indifferent to. So why is it that the opposite of the order of the pasuk? And actually, traditionally, they also bring an analogy of a king. That if you want to invite a king into your home, so first you have to get rid of the mouse droppings and the spider webs. And then you can bring in the royal utensils which are appropriate and worthy of a king. You're not going to bring in golden utensils and golden silverware when there's dirt all around. First you have to clean up the room, clean up the dwelling, clean up the home, and then you can bring in the things that are appropriate for royalty. And that's why we have a pasuk which says, first, surmera, get rid of the negative, and then asay tov, do the good. But the Rebbe says that with the advent of Hasidism, the Baal Shem Tov and the way of Hasidus changed that order. We do not start with the surmera, we start with the asay tov. I don't want to get into it. I think we spoke about this already many times. There's many stories of the Rebbe where he told shluchim that were dealing with people and learning with them, and they came to the Chabad house, that don't talk to them and preach to them about stopping to do the things which they're doing. That's not the approach. Today we first have to just anan pol the imam anan, pour goodness, shed light, more goodness, etc., etc. In other words, we start with asay tov, and through the asay tov, ma'at oir doicha har b'choshech, we spread the light, and a bit of light dispels much darkness, and then little by little he'll go away from the things which are negative in his life, and it'll become more positive and positive day by day, instead of doing the opposite. So in other words, like this, it comes out that technically, theoretically, it could be that first should be surmera and then asay tov, as we said before with the analogy of the home, that we have to get rid of the dirt before we can make it beautifully clean, etc. But practically speaking, we see that it doesn't work. That method doesn't work, especially in today's day and age, and especially in the last 250 years, etc., 300 years since Chassidus was revealed, and the way of the Baal Shem Tov, which is more the opposite way. First is dam. We tell the person, bring in a dosage, an infusion of positivity and light, and then later we'll talk about getting rid of the negative. And that's why this is the lesson that the Rebbe is taking from the order and the sequence of first comes dam and then comes tzfardeh. There's an interesting thing in general. I mean, this is an observation, I hope it's correct. We know that we look at other leaders and other groups of Orthodox Jews that have causes. So one group has a cause that only Jews, we have to be very careful to make sure only Jews are buried in the Jewish cemetery. Then we have others that are screaming about the modesty of there shouldn't be any Jewish girls that are in the army because it's not befitting for the Bas Melech Pnima that a woman should be in the army. I'm just saying there's different groups that have different issues. You have people that talk about, shatnez. You're not allowed to wear shatnez. I remember when I was a child in Borough Park, there was a famous Jew who traveled the world and saying every time you're wearing shatnez, it's like you're eating pork every single second, etc., etc. So we have different people talking about different things. And in Israel, some people, if they see a car on Shabbos, they'll throw stones at it. And everyone, knows about certain characters or groups. They go, Gewalt, Gewalt. They're making protests, etc. So they say that the Rebbe was once asked, how come he doesn't, make a protest about certain things? And the Rebbe said, Baruch Hashem, there are others that are doing it. So that's looking at it in a positive way, because, Baruch Hashem, there are others that are fighting those fronts, which they're meant to be fought. We're not knocking anybody here, chas v'sholem. But when you look at the Rebbe, how amazing is it that the Ten Mivtzoyim, everything about the Ten Mivtzoyim is something which is like proactive, positive. Put on film, put a mezuzah in your house, eat kosher, and of course there's the idea of not eating treif, but the emphasis is kasher your home. And even Shabbos, it's light Shabbos candles. So we'll not see any Lubavitcher Chassid screaming about people driving on Shabbos or throwing stones on cars that are driving Shabbos, because that's not our way. Our way is on the contrary. What's Shabbos? Shabbos is about peace, lighting Shabbos candles, which brings harmony and love and positivity into your homes. So it's amazing how in the Rebbe's Ten Mivtzoyim, it's all positive. And now open up your eyes and observe other groups that are worried about certain things that are not right, like Lashon Hara, etc. There's an emphasis of Sur Meirah. And in the Ten Mivtzoyim, the emphasis, I say Tov, because this is really the way of Shittas HaBaal Shem Tov, according to our understanding, and this is the message of first Dam and then Tzfardeh. Now, there's many sayings even in the non-Jewish world, but the Rebbe doesn't mention any like secular quotes. But in the Sikha, first I'll say what the Rebbe says, that this is also the answer to some people. They look at Judaism and they say, why do I have to get excited about it? Why do I have to be passionate about it? Why can't it be? I'll just do it without excitement. Was wirst du nicht spol? And I really don't want to get into this now, because you have to have the right explanation. So many people talk about nuance and balance. Okay, I don't want to get into it now, and don't use any of my words to say I meant this or that. But we have to be very careful when we talk about these things of nuance and balance, which of course Torah is for it, but that's not at the expense of not being really, really excited and on fire. Like we spoke about it here, when we're talking about somebody who's nafshi chaylas ava, somebody who's lovesick, it's not balanced. It's totally immersed and passionate about who you love, Hashem. And the same thing we say, V'ahavta Hashem lekecha, love Hashem, b'chol levavcha, u'v'chol nafshecha, u'v'chol ma'idecha. There's nothing balanced about that. It's totality. and absolute immersion, and being involved, etc. So the Rebbe is saying, so what's so terrible about the person that says, no, if I'm doing something evil, that's bad. But what's so terrible if I'm not so excited? So the truth is, obviously, we see from this that the point is that that's what you think, but that's how it starts. That's how all descent starts. So everyone knows that the famous quote from Elie Wiesel, which he said, the opposite of love is not hate, it's indifference. So what's the point? Because usually you say hate is something bad, but indifference, no. But therefore you have to have this idea that the opposite of love is not hate, it's indifference. Because then you're on guard. Be careful against indifference. Because from indifference comes hate. It's just that you don't realize it. And he continued and he said also, the opposite of life is not death, it's indifference. Same thing. When you say death and you say hate, everyone will say, of course it's terrible. But indifference, no, it doesn't sound so bad. It means like it sounds neutral. I'm balanced. I don't want to sway. I'm a moderate. I'm not an extremist. So we say no, indifference is just as bad. It could even be worse than hate and death, because that could be the enemy slapping you in the face and coming at you, and you don't even realize that through your indifference, the most terrible things will happen. And then there's another famous quote, but they're not sure who came up with this quote. And this is very, very famous. The only thing necessary for evil to succeed, the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. Very, very famous quote. So it's exactly the same thing. If people are indifferent, that's how evil triumphs. So the same thing now is true in our Avodas Hashem. And let's get back to the steps, the beginning of a person, whatever the story is. We could take it out, we could divest it of its religiosity. That, you know what the problem is? Like they say, boredom, or a person has a void, a person who's not driven. All those things, it's the same thing. That's the biggest disease. We said this story once many times, I think before. Somebody came, I think, to the Alter Rebbe. I think, don't quote me on this. And there's a whole story before it, but I'm just going to get to the punchline. And the punchline was that there was somebody who was not doing the right thing, and then the Alter Rebbe asked the Tzemach Tzedek, what's worse? A fast horse running in the wrong direction, or a slow horse running in the wrong direction? So on the one hand, you would think that what's worse is a fast horse running in the wrong direction. Why? Because every single second it's going further and further away, more distant. And the answer was no. The slow horse running in the wrong direction is worse. You know why? Because the fast horse hopefully will be able to turn him around, and then he's going to be going in the right direction fast. But the slow horse is still remaining a slow horse. In other words, once there's a void becomes something which is a magnet that attracts all negativity to it. That's why it's so terrible. Therefore, once a person has energy, once a person has drive, that drive could be channeled to the right direction. So therefore, in general, it's a true statement. What's going on with your life right now? You feel like you're getting anywhere? You feel like you're moving forward? You feel like you're achieving? You feel like you're making advancement? The answer is, get excited. What do you care about? Discover what makes you tick. And then you'll have drive, and you'll see how your life is going to change. There'll become a spring to you every single step. Why? Because now there's something you care about. Now there's something you're passionate about. So therefore, this is the message from this week's Parsha. We start with Dam, get excited. And then you'll be able to start with the positivity, and then you'll get rid of the negativity and toxicity sooner, etc. Now, I want to read you a story, a vort. And that is about a chassid. This is a story really, it was in the times of the Baal Shem Tov, and it's printed in the Sichas of Frierdiker Rebbe, that there was someone who's called the Rav Tzaddik, Rabbi Socha Dov Kobilniker. He's called the Lubavitcher Magid. So this is in the town of Lubavitch, but decades and decades before the Mittler Rebbe, who's the second Chabad Rebbe, who moved to the town of Lubavitch. So this story happens before even Chabad was founded, and before even the days of when the Maggid became the leader. So it's in the days of the Baal Shem Tov. This Yisachar Dov Kubliniker says, and he was one of the Baal Shem Tov's Shtila Talmidim, that he knew a person who was called Rabbi Yisrael dem Lebedikin, Rabbi Yisrael the lively one. So I'm going to read you now the words of the Frierdiker Rebbe, where it talks about how he was full of excitement and enthusiasm in serving Hashem, and it gives us a model, an image of what it means, a Yid who has a passion and an excitement towards Hashem. And this is one of the main emphasis of Chassidus in general. Even though it's Hashem b'simcha, serve the Eibush with joy. Joy in a way is the opposite of indifference and coldness. Anyways, so I'm going to read you now the words that it says over here. That he knew of a Jew, Rabbi Yisrael dem Lebedikin, Rabbi Yisrael, the one who was alive, lively and excited. And like I said, this is happening in the years 1740, 1750. So this Rabbi Yisrael Lebedike is schon gewesen Demos Atifazak, and at that time he was already an old man. Aben Tishim Oder Efshemer, 90 or even more, 90 years old or even more, is when Rabbi Yisrael for davening, when Rabbi Yisrael would daven, or the Chazan Tanakh or the Mishnayos, when he recite words of Tanakh or Mishnayos, it is given mit Azal Lebedikkeit wie a junger Manchik. It was with such a liveliness, like a young man. Rabbi Yisrael, for Kseder halten lein sagen, Rabbi Yisrael was very wont to say, mitzvah b'loi kavana ke guf b'loi neshama. A mitzvah without intent is like a body without a soul, which mitzvah b'loi kavana ke guf b'loi neshama is also similar to the idea of mitzvahs without avavir, without the emotions, is not parchel eila. It doesn't soar. There's no life to it. It's like dead weight. And this is one of the main points of Chassidus, to stress how it's not only about the act, it shouldn't be dry, robotic, or just routine, but it should be full of passion and life. And that's why it's similar, the same idea. Mitzvah b'lei kavana k'guf b'lei neshama. When you do a mitzvah without intent, that means without the spirit and the life that's behind it, then it's like a body without a soul. And this is part of this was his quote also, even though it's a Maimon Azal, and he would say it like this: "Und the kavanas hamitzvos." What is the kavanas hamitzvos? This is what he had in mind when he did all the mitzvahs. Ad the mitzvah kum from the mitzvah, that a commandment means that there's a commander. Mitzvah is zuzog. The zuzog kommt doch von dem zuzoger. There's a commandment which comes from a commander. Und der zuzoger is ani avaya shesisichem eretz Mitzrayim. By the way, this is why this story is so important to this week's parasha. As soon as we think about the commander Hashem, we have to remember Anochi Hashem Alikecha shesisichem eretz Mitzrayim. The first of the Aseret Adibris, and the first message that a Jew has is not only that he took us out of Egypt, so therefore he made us a nation, and we have to feel the gratitude, but it's a message about life. You should know that you're dealing with Hashem, and Hashem is the key to give you transcendence, and the key to give you triumph over whatever limitation, whatever prison, whatever boundaries or borders that you encounter, which you feel is holding you back. You should know, and the words that Rabbi Yisrael Lebedik would say, the Beire Baruch Hu, v'shlept haruis von alle blottes, the Creator, who drags us out, who rescues us from all sorts of mud, is as ich Yisrael garnished. So if I, Yisrael the nobody, hab Zeiche given, Mekayim seiner Zuzog von dem Kel Yochid Yisborich, I'm able to fulfill a commandment from Kel Yochid Yisborich Hashem, darf ich springen und tanzen bis Simcha Rabbah. I should be jumping and dancing with immense joy. And this is really the Zayim Yom, I think it's Ches Kislev, if I remember correctly, that a person should remember, we mentioned this already before, as Azak Kotn Shebektanim, like the person, the Menches, as azar kotten shebektane wie the mensch is, can goyim seine nachas ruach to the godlish of gdelim, the Eibush himself. So this should give him a joy and a spring in his step for his entire life. He should be inspired for his entire life based on this concept. So here we see the idea that with just this thought, that we, through our mitzvah, is becoming united with a force which is higher than any sort of limitations or whatever challenges, trials and tribulations of this world. Transcends all Meitzarim. And we become one with the commander by fulfilling the commandment. So this itself should fill us with an immense joy. We should be dancing and jumping all the time. So now we have the answers to all the questions. Why the sequence is Dam and then Tzvadea, and also why the Tzvadea jumped into the ovens. So the Eibush should help that every single one of us, we should we should be able to transcend all of our limitations, including the main limitation of Golus, and through us practicing our Dam and Tzvadea, we should merit the K'mitzes Chameret Mitzrayim Maren Flois Tekev Umeyad Mamish. Posting from my home, Be'ez Hashem Yisborach, your man in Melbourne.